Imagine a life where you no longer have to chase after anyone's approval, where you no longer have to force yourself to be loved, recognized, or seen in a certain way. A life where your inner peace is no longer shaken by the noise of society, by passing comments, or by the accidental looks that make your heart sink. You wake up not in the familiar chaos, but to a gentle voice rising from within, reminding you that you deserve to live softly and authentically as yourself. In that quiet space, even when you are alone, you do not feel lonely. You begin to release the things that have weighed on your shoulders for far too long. The expectations, the fears, the relationships that no longer nourish your soul. And as you let them go, clarity quietly awakens, inner strength rises, and the truth of who you are begins to unfold. True transformation always begins in solitude, where the soul finally has enough room to breathe and to bloom again. Today, we will walk together through the 12 Buddhist principles that can reshape your mind and spirit. Let us enter this journey with openness and presence. Principle 1. Letting go of the illusion of control. When we begin the journey of inner transformation, the first truth we must face is that human beings always tend to want to control everything around them. We want others to behave the way we expect. We want them to think as we think, react as we wish, and never do anything that could hurt us. We want life to follow the plan we have drawn in our minds, for the timing to be perfect, and for the outcomes to match the fantasies we hold. We hope everything will unfold in a smooth, straight line, without disruption or deviation. But life does not operate that way. Life is ever-changing, people are imperfect, and circumstances can shift in a single moment without any warning. When we cling tightly to everything, disappointment appears like a persistent shadow. The Buddha teaches that the root of suffering lies in attachment, especially the attachment to the belief that the world must move according to our wishes. The tighter we try to hold on, the more unsettled we feel. There is an old teaching that says you only lose what you cling to, because when we place all the weight of our mind onto something, we forget that its nature is impermanent. But when we practice letting go, something truly remarkable begins to happen. We shift from living with demands to living with what is present before us. We no longer waste energy trying to fix people, fix life, or fix situations beyond our control. We return to the only place we truly have power, which is how we respond to each moment that arises. In that instant of letting go, the mind begins to soften. The inner space expands and everything becomes clearer. Letting go is not abandoning life. Letting go is releasing the illusion that we can control everything. When we understand this, we begin to welcome life with grace and wisdom rather than tension and resistance. True strength does not lie in controlling life, but in the ability to regulate our own mind in the midst of its constant changes. And that is the first step toward the inner freedom we have been seeking all along. Principle 2. Sit with yourself, not with distractions. When we begin to release the illusion of control, something else gradually reveals itself. We realize that we are not only trying to control life, but also trying to control our emotions by constantly reaching for distractions. The moment we feel a bit uncomfortable, a little empty, or slightly sad, we immediately pick up our phone. We turn on music, open a video, message someone, or rush into a conversation as quickly as possible. We think we are helping ourselves feel better, but in truth, we are running away from being present with our own inner world. Over time, this habit turns us into strangers within the space of our own heart. The result is that we begin to fear silence. We become uneasy sitting still. A quiet room can feel more unsettling than a crowded place. Not because silence is frightening, but because in silence, the mind finally begins to speak, and we are not yet ready to listen. Truth, clarity, and the long-buried emotions all lie beneath the noise we create every single day. And if we continue to run from them, we will never know what we truly need, what we truly want, or where we are truly hurting. In the teachings of the Buddha, transformation only begins when we pause, face ourselves, and listen deeply. No one can heal for us. No sound can soothe us if the mind has not found a place to rest. This is why the most important practice is simply to sit down without bringing any form of distraction with us. No phone, no music, nothing to help us escape our feelings. Just sitting, allowing the silence to do its work. At first, it will feel awkward, even uncomfortable. But if we are patient and continue to observe, we will notice an inner current gradually becoming clearer. Silence is not emptiness. It is the space where the mind finds its way back home. You are not empty. You have simply been forgotten by your own attention for too long. You are not broken. You have just not been listened to long enough to understand what your heart has been longing for. And when you finally choose to sit with yourself, the real journey of healing gently begins to unfold. Principle 3. Embracing pain to be reborn. When we have gathered enough courage to sit with ourselves without escaping into noise, a deeper layer of emotion begins to surface. It is often the pain we have been hiding for many years. Most of us have the habit of running away from discomfort the moment it appears. We want to fix it quickly, make it disappear instantly, and we tend to treat pain as something ugly that must be removed. But this way of seeing pain makes us lose the opportunity to understand ourselves more deeply. In Buddhist teachings, pain is not the enemy. It is a messenger, a mirror that reflects with honesty the things we have not yet dared to face. Pain is the crack through which light enters. Imagine a seed before it sprouts. It must break open. That crack may look like destruction, but it is in fact the first step for life to begin. We are the same. Without the cracks life creates in us, we would remain trapped inside our old shells, never discovering how much we are capable of growing. When the heart goes through heartbreak, we become clearer about what truly matters. When we experience failure, our inner strength is sharpened through each moment of rising again. When we enter periods of silence and loneliness, we are not being abandoned. We are being guided back to the very place within us that needs healing the most. The important thing is to change the question we usually ask ourselves. Instead of repeating, "Why is this happening to me?" we can gently shift to, "What is this teaching me?" This new question opens a completely different doorway. It helps us move from being a victim to becoming a learner, from despair to maturity. And when we dare to look directly at our pain without hiding from it or resenting it, we begin to see an incredible power of renewal within it. Pain, when embraced with understanding and compassion, does not only break us, it can also rebuild us into a version of ourselves that is steadier, clearer, and far more authentic. That is the gift that suffering brings when we are calm enough to listen to its message. Principle 4. Simplify your life. Expand your spirit. When we understand that pain can become a doorway to rebirth, we begin to see life with new eyes. And at that moment, we realize that it is not only our inner world that carries layers of heaviness, but our outer life as well. This leads to an important question. How many things am I carrying that no longer serve my peace? It may be objects we have not used for years but still keep out of attachment. It may be a schedule so packed that we move from morning to night without a single moment to exhale. It may be the noise of social media, where comparison and anxiety pull us in endlessly. Or it may be relationships that drain our spirit, yet we hold on to them because we fear displeasing others or fear change. In the teachings of the Buddha, the root of suffering lies in craving. Not only craving for material possessions, but also craving for recognition, attention, and approval. When we hold on to too much, both the mind and life become heavy, like a room without space for light to enter. This is why the practice of simplifying is not only about removing physical clutter, but also about releasing psychological burdens and unnecessary expectations that we have carried for far too long. A simple question can help us see everything more clearly. Does this support my inner peace? If the answer is no, then that is exactly what we need to gently put down. When choosing relationships or activities, we begin to prioritize depth over quantity, authenticity over noise, nourishment over depletion. And when we live with less, we begin to feel more. We have more space to breathe and to observe our own mind. We have more time for reflection and for listening to the voice within. We have more energy to grow in a gentle yet steady way. Simplifying is not losing. It is opening the door to a more spacious, clearer, and freer life. Principle 5. Become the observer, not the reactor. When we begin to simplify our lives and create more space within, something very interesting appears. We realize that most of the suffering in our lives does not come from events themselves, but from the way we react to what happens. A careless comment, a strange look, a small change in plans can trigger anger, anxiety, sadness, or impulsive actions in an instant. And then we regret the words we should not have said or the things we should not have done. The suffering does not lie in the event, but in our unconscious reaction to it. In Buddhist teachings, we are not to identify ourselves with our emotions or thoughts. They are simply phenomena that arise and fade, like waves on the surface of the ocean. And we, the deepest part of us, are the ones who observe these waves. When we treat emotions as our true identity, we are pulled away by them. But when we observe them, we keep our freedom. The practice of becoming the observer begins with simplicity. When anger arises, simply call it by its name. Anger is here. When fear appears, whisper that fear is present. When sadness comes, acknowledge that sadness is passing through the mind. We do not try to push feelings away, do not try to fix them, and do not rush to believe that they represent absolute truth. We observe them the way we watch clouds drifting across the sky. They come and go. No cloud stays forever. The most important aspect of this practice is the small pause between stimulation and reaction. That pause is brief, yet it is the shelter of wisdom and freedom. When we take a deep breath before responding, we give ourselves the power to choose. Not the choice between right and wrong, but the choice between peace and chaos. The strongest person is not the one who reacts the fastest or wins the argument. The strongest person is the one who has enough stillness to look at the rising emotion without being swept away by it. The one who chooses peace for their own heart in the very moment life tests them. And when we become the observer, we do not only heal ourselves. We also spread calmness and gentleness to those around us. Principle 6. Letting go of the old self that no longer serves you. When we learn to observe our emotions without being carried away by them, we begin to see more clearly the stories we have unconsciously told about ourselves for many years. Each person carries an image of who they believe they are. Some believe they are inadequate, always failing, never good enough, or unworthy. These beliefs did not appear out of nowhere. They were shaped by old wounds, by criticisms once directed at us, by moments of abandonment, by the times we tried our best but were not acknowledged. Over time, we mistakenly assume that these wounds are our true nature. But in Buddhist teachings, there is no fixed self. A human being is a process, always changing, always growing. What we call the self is only a combination of memories, emotions, habits, and experiences. If all of these can change, then we too can change. The only thing that holds us back is the belief that we cannot be different. Letting go of the old self does not mean rejecting it. That old version of you helped you survive. It carried you through difficult seasons of life. But when a new journey begins, we cannot continue living in an outdated identity built from pain. It is time to gently put it down and step into a more spacious and clear version of who we are meant to become. Transformation begins with small acts. We stop repeating the stories that belittle ourselves. We stop reinforcing the narrative that we are not enough. Instead, we act as the version of ourselves we want to grow into. If we want to live with more confidence, we commit to a small action that reflects confidence. If we want to live with more compassion, we start with a gentle word directed at ourselves. Change does not come from one grand moment. It comes from countless small moments where we choose differently. Releasing the self built from wounds is the first step toward returning to the self built from wisdom and understanding. When we allow ourselves to grow without being confined by outdated identities, we open the door to inner freedom. And from that moment on, the journey toward becoming our truest and fullest self truly begins. Principle 7. Learning the art of walking alone. When we begin to let go of the old self and step into the process of recreating who we are, another feeling may arise. It is the sense of emptiness that appears when we look around and realize that not everyone can walk with us on our new path. Many people have felt abandoned at some point, felt misunderstood, felt that no one was truly there during their most vulnerable moments. These experiences make us afraid of being alone and make us cling to any relationship even if it no longer aligns with us. But in Buddhist teachings, solitude is not a punishment. It is a sacred space where we meet ourselves most clearly, where the mind becomes quiet enough for truth to speak. The modern world encourages constant connection. Phones are always on. Social media is always glowing. Notifications flood in and make us believe that we are never alone. But connection without self-awareness only creates more chaos. We talk to hundreds of people and still feel empty. We stay online all day and still feel disconnected from the world. This is because what we lack is not the presence of others, but the presence of ourselves. Walking alone means stepping into a space where there is no audience, no applause, and no one to show us the way. There is only ourselves choosing to show up for our own soul. We do not need to act strong for others to see, nor do we need to paint our emotions just to be loved. In this quietness, we finally see what we truly need, what nourishes us and what must be released. Walking alone is not loneliness. It simply means we are strong enough to stand without needing someone else to hold us up. When the mind becomes steady in silence, we step back into the world with a different energy. A gentle independence, a deep freedom, and a kindness that is not conditioned by anything outside us. And in that moment, we truly understand that walking with someone is a choice, not a necessity. Principle 8. Choose mindfulness instead of multitasking. When we learn the art of walking alone and begin to feel the peace that arises in silence, we start to notice another truth. We are not only afraid of loneliness, we are also afraid of stopping. In modern life, we are used to doing many things at once. While eating, we still scroll through our phones. While listening to someone speak, we are already preparing our response. While walking on the street, our mind drifts back to the past or leaps forward into imagined future scenarios. Life becomes scattered into small, fragmented moments. We appear to be everywhere, yet we are not truly present anywhere. The consequence of multitasking is not that we accomplish less, but that we slowly lose ourselves. Our energy is divided into pieces. The body feels tired, yet the mind feels empty. Each day passes like a series of automatic actions, without depth, without clarity of emotion. We gradually lose the ability to appreciate something as simple as a gentle breath or the warm taste of tea on the tongue. In the teachings of the Buddha, mindfulness is the bridge that brings us back to true living. When eating, just eat. When listening, just listen. When drinking tea, let it become a sacred ritual. When we give our full attention to a single action, life immediately becomes vivid. We begin to feel colors, sounds, flavors, and most importantly, we feel ourselves being truly present. As we practice mindfulness, the nervous system calms. The mind becomes less cloudy and no longer runs wildly after unnecessary things. We realize that life is not happening in some distant future, nor does it live in a past that has already closed. It is unfolding right in this moment, in this breath, in this step, in this glance. The message of this principle is clear. Stop chasing more in order to live more deeply in a single moment, because it is this very moment that contains the peace we have been searching for. And when we are fully present for each passing second, life no longer rushes by, but becomes a rich and meaningful experience. Principle 9. Accept the present and change what can be changed. When we learn to be fully present in each moment, We begin to see more clearly the cycle of suffering we have been unconsciously living in for many years. We often think if only things were different, if only that person understood us better, if only we had not said that, if only the past could be rewritten. Then we replay our mistakes in our minds like an old song, holding on to anger, regret, and self-punishment without knowing how to break free. The more we fight reality, the more exhausted the mind becomes. In the Buddha's teachings, healing cannot come from fighting what already exists. Reality is already as it is. Our resistance only deepens the wound. Healing requires a delicate balance between acceptance and action, between letting go and moving forward. Acceptance is not surrender, and it is not allowing ourselves to be harmed. Acceptance simply means looking directly at the truth that the past has already happened, and we cannot turn time backward. We do not force ourselves to accept injustice or toxicity, but we do need to accept that these things existed so we can move on without carrying their weight. The practice of this principle begins with a simple question: can I change this? If the answer is yes, we act with clarity and compassion. We change what can be changed with a healthy mindset, without bitterness and without impulsiveness. If the answer is no, we release the need to fight a battle that cannot be won. We take a deep breath and trust that life has its own natural movement. Sometimes letting go is the wisest action. Peace does not come from a life without problems. Peace arises when we have inner clarity, even while problems still exist. When we stop wrestling with reality and understand when to act and when to let go, we enter a state of inner freedom. And from that clarity, we continue forward with more lightness, more stability, and more wisdom. Principle 10. Choose compassion even toward yourself. When we learn to accept the present and act with clarity, we begin to recognize another deep layer of suffering. It is the way we treat ourselves. Many of us are incredibly soft-hearted toward others. When someone else makes a mistake, we can understand, empathize, and forgive them. But toward ourselves, we become harsh to the point of cruelty. One small mistake, and we replay it in our minds again and again as if punishing ourselves. We blame, criticize, and quietly diminish our own worth. Over time, we create an inner environment so toxic that we no longer feel safe within our own hearts. In the Buddha's teachings, compassion is not a lofty concept reserved only for others. Compassion must begin at the place where it is born. That place is our own heart. We cannot love another fully if we are filled with battles inside. We cannot heal if we become the one who repeatedly wounds ourselves. This is why the practice in this principle is simple yet incredibly powerful. Speak to yourself in the same tone you would use with the person you love most. It is all right. You are learning. You are still deserving. You have tried so hard. You do not need to be perfect to be worthy of love. When we see ourselves as a child learning to walk, we become patient and gentle. We understand that falling is a natural part of growing. When we stop fighting against ourselves, we finally create the space needed to grow. When we stop judging ourselves, we cultivate the softness required for genuine transformation. Because true change is not built on harshness or shame. It is built on understanding, forgiveness, and love directed inward. And when we choose compassion for ourselves, the mind becomes lighter. The breath becomes deeper. Life becomes gentler. From that softness, we move forward with a heart no longer afraid and a mind spacious enough to welcome every experience life brings. Principle 11. Breaking the loop by breaking the thought. When we learn to choose compassion for ourselves, we begin to see more clearly the subtle movements of the inner world. The truth is that each day, thousands of thoughts pass through the mind. Some are harmless and fade away like light clouds. But others quietly damage our inner energy, drain our confidence, weaken our motivation, and erode our belief in our own worth. These are thoughts such as I am not good enough. I always fail. I cannot change. I am not lovable. These sentences repeat so many times within the mind that eventually we accept them as truth. In the Buddha's teachings, the reality we experience is shaped largely by the thoughts we believe again and again. When we believe we are weak, we act as someone weak. When we believe we are useless, we view opportunities through fearful eyes. When we believe we are unworthy, we withdraw from the good things meant for us. But the important thing is that these thoughts do not speak the truth about who we are. They are only habits formed in the mind, strengthened over time. A thought is not our true nature. It is merely a pattern, a mental groove formed from memories, experiences, and words we once heard when we were young. If it can be programmed, it can also be reprogrammed. That is where mental freedom begins. And this principle is the most technical in the entire journey of transformation. It shows us how to break the cycle of self-destruction and open the doorway to a new way of living that begins from within. The process has three simple yet profoundly powerful steps. The first step is recognition. When a negative thought appears, instead of believing it immediately, we pause. Just a few seconds. That pause is like turning on a light in a dark room. We realize that a thought is appearing rather than believing I am this thought. This recognition is the key to separating ourselves from the stream of thinking and not being swept away by it. The second step is questioning. We ask whether the thought is true, whether it is useful, whether it leads us toward the life we want. When we question a thought, its power weakens. A negative thought cannot survive when we shine the light of truth onto it. For example, when the mind says, I always ruin everything, we can ask whether that is truly accurate. Do I always fail, or do I simply remember the failures and forget the successes? When the mind says, I never change, we can look back and see how much we have already grown compared to who we once were. The third step is replacement. This is the step that reprograms the mind. We choose a healthier, more realistic and kinder thought to take the place of the old one. Instead of I always ruin things, we can say I have made mistakes, but I am learning. Instead of I never change, we can say I have already changed a lot and I can continue to grow. These statements are not denial of reality. They are a truer way of seeing our experience. The beautiful truth is that modern science confirms what the Buddha taught thousands of years ago. The human brain can change itself through repetition. This ability is called neuroplasticity. It means that each healthy thought we choose and repeat forms a new neural pathway, gradually replacing the old one. When we choose better thoughts, we do not only change emotions, we are literally reshaping the structure of the brain in a more positive direction. Meditation is also an important part of this process. When we meditate, we can see clearly the noise inside the mind, the stream of thoughts constantly passing through. When we observe instead of attaching to them, we develop the ability to choose. Meditation helps us avoid being controlled by thoughts and creates the inner space needed to plant new, healthier patterns. The message of this principle is one of the most important. Healing does not begin with a new job, a new person, or a new place. Healing begins with a new thought. When we change how we think, we change how we feel. When emotions change, actions change. And when actions change, life itself begins to shift in a new direction. Everything begins inside the mind. When we break the old loop by breaking the old thoughts, we create space to build a deeper, clearer, and freer way of living. And from that space, we step into a new chapter of transformation, where we are no longer bound by the old voices in our head, but guided by our own wisdom and awakening. Principle 12. Return to the breath. Anchor the mind in the present. After we have learned how to recognize our thoughts, question them, and form new pathways in the mind, the journey of transformation brings us back to the simplest yet most powerful practice of all. The breath. The breath is the only thing that is present in every moment of life. It does not belong to the past that has already slipped away, nor to the future that has not yet arrived. It exists only in the present. Without the breath of this very moment, we cannot live even a single second. That is why the breath is the gentle reminder that life is happening right now. When life becomes chaotic, The mind often slips away from the present. It runs back to the past to replay mistakes, regrets, and painful memories. Or it rushes into the future, imagining the worst outcomes and frightening itself with stories that have not yet happened. Both directions steal our inner peace. When the mind is not here, the body cannot truly relax. We become people living in memories or in predictions, forgetting the moment that is holding us. This is why the breath is considered the doorway that brings us home. The moment we place attention on the breath, the mind is pulled back into the present. When we breathe in, we know we are breathing in. When we breathe out, we know we are breathing out. In that small space of awareness, all inner noise begins to fade. The breath becomes the bridge that connects body, mind, and spirit. It creates a foundation strong enough for us to stand steady in the midst of life's changes. Returning to the breath does not require anything complicated. We simply sit or stand comfortably, take a deep inhalation, hold it gently, and exhale slowly. We feel each stage of the breath. We feel the chest expand and soften. We feel the belly rise and fall. If we want to go deeper, we can place a hand on the heart like a silent prayer. When the hand touches the chest, we feel the heartbeat of life and remember that we are still here, still alive, still given the chance to grow. Whenever the mind becomes overwhelmed, a few conscious breaths are enough to bring it back. Deep breathing soothes the nervous system. Slow exhalations lower the heart rate, relax the muscles, and clear the mind. This mechanism is not only spiritual, but supported by science. People who practice deep breathing regularly have lower cortisol levels. Cortisol is the hormone of stress. When it decreases, emotional resilience increases. The brain becomes sharper, sees more clearly, and no longer reacts excessively. The breath also strengthens immunity, helping the body recover faster from stress while keeping the mind from becoming clouded. When the mind is clear, we make wiser decisions, unaffected by negative emotions. That is why in many meditation traditions, the breath is considered the very foundation of awareness. This practice can be done anywhere. At the start of the day, 3 deep breaths are enough to reset your energy. Before going to sleep, 3 slow breaths help release whatever tension remains. In the middle of a busy day, when emotions are pulled tight, even a single conscious breath can shift your entire inner state. The breath is like an anchor. When everything around you shakes, the breath holds you steady. It brings you back to the safe space within, where you can see life with clearer eyes and feel it with a more open heart. The simplicity of breath is its greatness. You do not need a meditation hall, sacred instruments, or perfect silence. You only need your own breath. It has been with you since the day you were born and will stay with you until your final moment. But only when you bring awareness to it does the breath become a force of healing. The message of this principle is beautifully clear. When you return to the breath, you return to yourself. You pause to see that you are not being swept away by the past or the future. The breath is the anchor of the mind when the world around you becomes turbulent. With just one conscious breath, you begin to shift your inner state. And when the breath becomes your companion, you will never truly lose yourself in the waves of life. After moving through the entire journey of the 12 principles, you may look back and realize that each principle is like a gentle invitation to return to yourself, letting go of control so that life becomes lighter, sitting with yourself so that silence no longer feels frightening, learning from pain so that you can grow, simplifying so the mind has more space, observing instead of reacting so inner freedom can remain, releasing the old self so you can step into a clearer version of who you are, walking alone yet staying steady, living mindfully so each moment can be fully felt, accepting the present and changing what can be changed, choosing compassion toward yourself to nourish the heart, breaking old thought loops to open the path to something new, and finally, returning to the breath, where the mind is anchored in peace. Through each step, You can clearly see that you are not broken, but becoming. You are not slow, but awakening in the rhythm that belongs uniquely to you. Every moment you return to yourself is a step closer to inner freedom. The strongest version of you is not born in the noise of the crowd, but shaped in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And from those very moments, you begin rebuilding your life with clarity, with wisdom, and with a deep compassion for your own being. Your journey of transformation begins right here, in this breath.